For today's card, we're going to start out using the Spirited Snowman. We're using Memento ink in the Stamparatus on a piece of white Whisper White cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I'm going to stamp him where I want him, and the whole point of this is to create a ice reflection. I want ice around him, and then I want him to be on top of the ice. So in order to do that, I went ahead and heat set it just to make sure it didn't smear. And then after that, I'm going to remove the Stamparatus, and I have already cut him out again around the lines, so no spacing, but just around the lines. And I'm putting that on top of this. So I've made a mask is what I've essentially done. So that way I do not ink over him when I go to ink my ice. So here I'm just taking a sticky note, and I cut out of the layering ovals. It's the third one for me because they're numbered, but just whatever size you would like. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and take some Pool Party ink and color this in. Now, you can do this however dark or light you want to. I ended up going a little bit light, and then I came back and did it just a teeny bit darker, which you'll see where I also add shading here in a little bit with the balmy blue. So just around his body, I come back in and add a little bit of balmy blue to give him some natural shading. But again, that mask is going to help us not get out of the lines, and that way he is on top of the ice. Because what we're going to do after this is we're going to create a reflection. So I need to make sure that all of my inking is done before I go in and create his reflection in the water. Okay, so while I'm doing this inking part, let me tell you what you're going to need for the next part of this. So you are going to need your Stamparatus, but then you're also going to need your Big Shot embossing mats. And I use the gray one out of the set because there's a white, a gray, and a blue. And that makes a great option as far as stamping on and being able to reverse the image. And with this ink, you can go as light or as dark as you want to. Like I said before, I did end up making it a little bit darker. And you have to remember you've still got white in the background. And here we are to the reverse image. You can see that I already have an image already on here. And I see how I moved it just now. And then this is where I go into my card and add that balmy blue that I was talking about, because I just wanted some shading and I wanted to make sure that all that was done before I ended up stamping this on top. But I ended up having to take that off of the mat. I have to clean it off, and I just used a paper towel and some water, and it came right up with the Memento ink. I would not suggest using Stays-On. You'd have to use a Stays-On cleaner. But so you'll see me wipe that off here in just a moment. So I put the card in, and then I lined up the bottom of his feet. And you see my lines at the top where I've lined out my grid. So I knew exactly where I needed to be. And again, I'm just going to ink him up in Memento. And notice I am stamping him upside down. And then I ink that up really good, press down pretty hard. And then ink him up again, because we are transferring that ink from the mat. So I want to make sure that I got good coverage. And then I take the card upside down, line it up in between my option at the top where I've drawn my lines, and then press down really firmly. And then just rub back and forth until I feel comfortable, and I've got that image now. So that is how I got the reverse image. And again, this is just water and a paper towel to clean that up with. So in order to create a whole scene, if you will, I went ahead and added some ground to this. And the ground is where my fence is going to be. My fence is going to come from the Farmhouse Frameless dies from the holiday catalog that is on page 13. And I love this little fence. It is so cute. So I will probably be using it in a lot of my projects. I went ahead and cut it out of white, and I did not do anything to it. I didn't, ink it. I didn't anything. I just left it completely stark white, and it's going to go at the very bottom of this card. And just to let you know as well, as I mentioned, I did cut this down. I am working on a card front because I needed it to be flat while I was working on it, and I didn't want to have to worry about the back of the card getting in the way. I will just take this and glue it on top of either a colored base or another white cardstock. But I'll probably end up gluing it to a front as well. So just to let you know, that is why it's just one piece and not a full card, because I wanted it to be flat while I was working on it and doing all of this inking and coloring. And then when I knew that when I colored in the snowman that it might bleed through as well, depending on how heavy-handed I was. So that is why I'm not choosing to do this on a full card. So there you can see that I've got my ground. And now we're going to go ahead and remove the masks. And I used the eraser to get off any, ink or glue. And then I went ahead and removed the mask from the snowman. Again, removing any kind of residue that was left over. And here I determined that my skates, you can sort of kind of see through. So I took the very, very edge of my dauber and the Pool Party ink and just kind of colored that in just a tiny bit. So that way it didn't look like we missed a spot. So in between his actual skate boot and then the skate part is where I added that. Now time for some coloring. We're going to color his hat with Poppy Parade and Shaded Spruce. And then his nose we're going to color with Pumpkin Pie. And for his arms and his legs, I'm going to use Crumb Cake. And I'm just using markers for these. You could actually use the Stampin' Blends if you wanted to, but it was what I had handy and it worked out just as good. I have to count when I do the scarves or I end up messing it up. I go forward in one direction and backwards in the other, and that seems to work out better for me, so that way I don't mess it up and end up coloring them the same way where they don't line up. So you can see there I was about to start forward again, but decided no, I better go backwards, because had I started forwards I would have gotten it wrong. And then again, this is just Crumb Cake on the arms and the legs. And for his buttons, I actually used the new Gray Granite color, which is really perfect for something that you want that's really light, but is also still gray. So it worked out great for his little buttons. So there's the Pumpkin Pie, and then here's the Gray Granite. And now that we've got our coloring done, I'm going to remask him. And you can see I'm also going to remask our ice. And once I get this masked off, what I'm going to do is I'm also going to mask the bottom part off too, the ground that we made, because I wanted to add some color to the entire thing. So as you can see my little daubs up there, this is a sponge and Highland Heather. But what I did is I inked it up pretty good, and then I got 99% of the ink off of the sponge because I knew that I didn't want it to be very dark. I just wanted a very light lavender background, and this was the perfect color for that. It was light enough and bright enough that it does make a difference. If you've never seen snow, I'm sorry, but if you've seen snow, when it glistens, it has that purpley iridescent hue to it, especially when the sun shines on it. And so that's what I was going for here, is I wanted a little bit of that iridescent purple to come through. So I make it a little bit darker in some areas and a little lighter in others. And I think it turned out really good, and it made the entire thing pop, as you can see here. So now our snowman, I guess, is really white. So here I take the 1 1/4 inch circle punch and I stamped out Winter Cheer, and I cut that out. And then the 1 3/8 inch circle punch, and I cut a piece of Highland Heather out. And then I just marry those two together with a Stampin' Dimensional. And I cover my black spot on the left-hand side where I accidentally thumbprinted some ink. So I got that put there. And you can see here I was dry fitting to make sure that my fence is going to go all the way across. And then now I'm going to take the Blizzard Thinlits die, cut those out of the Glimmer Paper and Sparkle, and I'm just going to adhere those onto the card. I really love the way that this whole die works. I did have to run it through a couple times because this paper is just a teeny bit thicker, but I really loved it, and I ended up cutting a bunch of these out. So I didn't make you watch the whole thing, but this is me placing them all down. And then now I'm just adding glue to the bottom of the fence and get that added on. and we are pretty much done. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it and putting all of this stuff together to figure out how I really wanted to do this card. I had it in my head, but just getting it all on paper was the fun part. So thank you for stopping by. Please make sure you also visit the other blog hops that are on this month's Glitter Cleans blog hop. And again, I appreciate your time and hope that you try this out. Thank you so much. Y'all have a great day.